Well, hello again all my YouTubers, and thanks once more for returning to Classic Dirt Bike TV, and I hope you're all keeping safe and well from the dreaded COVID that's still sweeping the country. Okay, in this next video we're going to take a trip back to 2014 to the Robbie Allan Memorial Scramble, and we're going to take a look through the paddock at some of the machines that were caught during the two-day event at Tinto Moto Parc. Now this event of course was in memory of the late Robbie Allan, and in our future videos we will be showing you some racing action from this 2 days of racing at this meeting. So enough chitty chat from me just now, let's just get straight into the video. Now this two-day event that was held at the Tinto Moto Parc venue that Robbie created was to celebrate the life of the great man who was a major influence not only in Scottish motorcycle sport but nationally as well. Now through his life Robbie raced in trials, grass tracks, motocross, enduros, and for many years Robbie and his family ran the Scottish motorcycle show at Ingliston near Edinburgh. Although sadly we did lose Robbie in August of 2013 at the age of 72, although there's certainly not enough time in this video to list this man's lifetime achievements, and this two-day memorial event was to really honour Robbie's memory and of course to raise cash for Macmillan cancer support. Now it's quite hard to imagine that this was midsummer in Scotland, but as you can see the Saturday was pretty dismal with the heavy rain, and Neil Hudson there taking a little walk through the paddock, and the late John Bethell wheeling his nice JBR Honda from its transporter. Now John's JBR Honda of course was built by Rod Spry, and on the left there that's Joe Maxwell, who builds those 1974 CCM replica bikes. And here we have a nice old quite original looking 1965 Greaves Challenger, and this bike belonged to Albert Britton. Of course the bike's not got the proper exhaust fitted here, but a lot of these older pieces of vintage iron seldom have all their factory parts fitted these days, purely because of their aging years. But this example would certainly still make a very good winter restoration project if it ever came up for sale. But this was a beautiful bike that was on display in the marquee on the Saturday. Now I don't know much about it, although I'm sure that this bike belonged to Robbie's brother, the famous Vic Allan, as this bike and another machine had Vic's racing number stamped on them. Now it's certainly a BSA B50 Victor, although I'll wager that this is no ordinary BSA and has some history behind it, but unfortunately I never really managed to get any further details on the bike, as both myself and of course Vic were far too busy doing other things during the course of the weekend, so we never had a chance to have a chat about this bike. Although it certainly looks like it's been through the workshop and has had a full restoration of some kind done, although it's quite unusual to see one of these BSA Victors with a matte black motor and painted carburetor. But then again, this could possibly still be a rare BSA competition motor, as these were of a completely different spec from the normal B50s that were sold to the general public. But that chrome plated frame, the alloy tank, mudguards and side panels, and not forgetting those lovely steel chrome wheels, certainly do it for me. And as an old classic BSA dirt bike goes, this is certainly one of the best that I've seen in quite a while. Now again, the bike also appears to be quite valuable, as you can see it's been secured by that wire rope just to deter anybody with sticky fingers just wheeling it out the front gate. But without doubt it's a nice piece of British motorcycling history, and maybe you know something about the bike, and if you do, then please feel free to leave your comments in the appropriate section below this video, and that way we can all share some more details on this delightful looking motorcycle, because this bike was certainly attracting a lot of attention over the course of the 2 days, and when you take a close look at it you can understand exactly why. Now I'm waging again here that this is another lovely classic belonging to Vic Allan, and this beautiful Rickman Matisse BSA Gold Star was another of the bikes that was turning heads over the course of the Robbie Allan weekend. Now another stunning British BSA classic that looks like it's again come straight from the factory, and all decked out of course in that superb British racing green colour scheme. Although they were quite big and heavy, these old Gold Star motorcycles, but then again most of these old 1960s scramblers were back in the day, and you certainly couldn't just wimp out and take it easy when you rode one of these bikes, because you had to hang on for dear life and develop muscles like big Arnie Schwarzenegger to be able to throw one of these beasties around the track. Because many of the riders that rode these bikes back in the day didn't have the luxury of high-tech long travel suspension systems, and it was all down to the rider's skill and determination if you wanted to put one of these bikes on the top step of the podium. Although the bike's frame is another work of art from the Rickman brothers, who supplied many of these old Scramblers chassis back in the 1960s, and you basically just bought the frame kit with its included swing arm, tank seat and side panels, and then you just fitted your own motor into it, and this old Gold Star certainly fits this chassis perfectly. But again, another beautiful old classic machine, and I must say it's one of the first old Gold Stars that I've come across in this British racing green colour, although I'm sure again that this particular bike will have a decent history behind it, being placed alongside that lovely BSA Victor. Now this next bike is maybe not a classic as classics go, but this old CRF 450 Honda was the actual bike that Robbie rode in the Paris Dakar rally in 2006, and Robbie went on to complete almost 3/4 of the distance until a huge sandstorm put paid to his challenge. Although the most remarkable thing about that entire endeavour was that Robbie was 65 years old at the time, and he still retains that accolade as being the oldest private competitor to ever enter the Paris Dakar event. Now the Paris Dakar rally is, as you know, a monumental feat for even the youngest, fittest motorcycle rider, but to take it on at the age of 65 was a huge challenge and a very big achievement for Robbie at the time. And as you'd expect, his 450 Honda was fitted with all the latest GPS equipment and other necessities like extra fuel tanks, etc. And because Robbie was a privateer, he also had to do all the bike's maintenance himself, so you can just imagine riding for miles on this bike in the desert in the blistering heat, and then having to work on the bike later on in the evening. But it was an absolute mega challenge for Robbie and his 450 Honda, and they were both still hailed as heroes, even though he never managed to complete the full distance, which was about 5,000 miles, or nearly 7,900 kilometres. Now again, this was another nice bike that I spotted at the Robbie Allan Paddock. Now it's not a motocross bike of course, but a lovely Dot trials machine. Now this particular person had quite a few of these old British made bikes on show, and this trials bike was certainly a little belter. Now Dot were another of the older British motorcycle manufacturers, and their roots can be traced back to the early 1900s when they were founded by Harry Reid. But they did make a huge assortment of road and off-road bikes for many years, and they still use the DOT, or Devoid of Trouble badge, as their marketing logo. But this is a very nice looking bike. I don't know anything about this particular model, but it looks light and slim enough to fit what your requirements would be for a little nimble trials bike. And this pair is just a very small drop in the ocean of the many different machines that Dot produced down through the years. But certainly one of those long lost British motorcycle manufacturers, and it's great to see these bikes still being used at these race events. Now there's another racing legend on the left there. That's the late Jimmy Allan, of course one of Robbie's brothers, who we also sadly lost just a few years back. But it looks like Jimmy's having a nice wee chat with CCM man Les Calderwood. Now a lovely old 1981 GS 490 Micro Enduro bike, and this was Maurice Wharton's machine just prior to it taking part in the classic Enduro event on the Saturday lunchtime. Now they had the Enduro on the Saturday afternoon and the classic trial later in the day, followed of course by the charity auction at night, so there was plenty going on the Saturday before the big classic scramble event on the Sunday. And we can see Morris's Michael here sitting next to Russell Watson's 480 Honda, who actually went on to win the over 40s and 50s twin shock event on the Sunday. Now also on the Saturday I spotted a few of these Italian made SWMs on display at the Enduro, or Speedy Working Motors if you want to give them their full title. And this nice 1978 370 bike belonged to local man Mike Wiley from Kirtliston near Edinburgh. Now these again were excellent bikes in their day, whether they were being used in these Enduros or at Scrambles race events. The chassis were very good for a 1978 bikes, and many of course were powered by these Rotax two-stroke motors, which were light, powerful and almost bulletproof, and you had to be pretty cack-handed to damage one of these power plants. But again, excellent old classics, and very popular with the likes of Scrambles and Enduro vintage riders, and if any of these bikes come up for sale, they're usually snapped up very quickly. But this was another very interesting bike, and this was a 1964 Matchless 500 Matisse that was actually being ridden by British Scrambles legend Andy Robertson. Now Andy was, and of course still is, one of the old school heroes from the golden era of British scrambling, and to list Andy's achievements here would probably add another hour to this video, although it's suffice to say that he's a legend, and he still takes part in some of these big classic Scrambles events today. But again, I'm certainly no expert on these old British bikes, but I'm reasonably confident that this is another of those Rickman Matisse chassis kits with what I think is one of the old G50 Matchless 500 motors fitted in it. But as far as I'm aware, there weren't many of these old G50s made, and these big bruisers were I think a bored out version of the old HIS 350 4-stroke motor. But these G50 engines were widely used in road racing back in the 1960s, but this is certainly for me the first time I've ever seen one in a Scramble's frame. But this is still a super quick old bike, and if you tune into my next video here on Classic Dirt Bike TV, you'll get a chance to see Andy kick ass on this very bike. Okay, just to finish off this Robbie Allan Paddock walkabout, we're going to take a look at this nice Matty Taylor Special 500 Jawa. Now again, sadly, I never got to speak to the bike's builder on the day, but what a cracking looking bit of kit, and looks like it's been beautifully put together. Now if you've got one of these big Jawa engines in your Scramble's bike, you'll never be short of horsepower with that big methanol fueled Jawa engine in your frame. And I've seen another couple of these MTS specials before, and one of them had a Triumph twin engine in it with much the same looking frame, tank and seat. But these 500 ESO Jawa engines were widely used as speedway power plants back in the day because of their big, long stroking 4-stroke engines, and as I remember, they had an external oil pump on the right hand side of the crank as well. But a beautifully put together bike, and this was also raced in the Scramble on the Sunday, so if you're lucky you may get a chance to see this bike in action on the track in my next video posting. Although the entire weekend at this Robbie Allan Memorial event was a truly inspiring experience for everybody concerned, because it was all about reliving the memory and celebrating the motorcycling achievements of the great man Robbie Allan. And these few bikes that I've shown you here were just a minute selection of what was on show over the course of the 2 days. Now, the other important part of the Robbie Allan Memorial Weekend was also to raise money for charity, and every penny from entries etc. went straight to Macmillan Cancer Support. And here we see Robbie's widow Margaret handing over a cheque for £28,000, which was raised over the course of the 2 days. Well, I do hope you enjoyed having a look at some of those quite nice machines at this Robbie Allan Memorial Scramble at Tinto Moto Park. And in my next video posting, we will be showing you some of the races from this 2-day event. So I hope you'll return to take a look at that. So once again, thanks for tuning in to Classic Dirt Bike TV, and we'll speak again very soon.